Globespan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion with the pros, the cons, the ones that have taken a side, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation building. As we span the globe for voices from the diaspora and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana. This land is our land now. As the world turns on its axis, bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adapt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all the viewers of Globespan. Welcome again to one of our other edition tonight, Election 2025. We have a very much distinguished and very high-profile guest with us tonight, and of course, we have no other than Mr. Christopher Ram, attorney at law and also a chartered accountant. We also have with us tonight Professor Dr. Blackman, and a professor out at Medgar Evers College. And we have with us political analyst and commentator, Mr. GHK. We have a really packed program here tonight. And while I'm starting out the program, please go ahead and share the program. If you're on Facebook, share it to your friends and families. And of course, if you're on YouTube, do forward the link to anyone and also press the like button. I want to skip some of our usual announcement because I need to get as much discussion in tonight's program than usual, meaning that we, of course, leading up to 2025, September 1st is not very far away from us. And certainly we need to be able to get a full-fledged discussion going here tonight. So I want to start off tonight. Just before I start off, if you need to get in touch with Globespan, please call us 631-782-8694 or email us support@globespan247.com. I was about to say just before I start off, I wanted to also express that we did send out invitation to former Prime Minister Sam Hinds. I also sent another invitation out to Sanjeev Dattatin, trying to get everyone to be able to be on these programs and whereby we could have multiple voices and having more of a balanced discussion. However, neither of them responded. So going into tonight's program, I want to first start with the distinguished Mr. Christopher Ram to just give us his view, how the election process is unfolding, and make some comments in what he sees over the course of the next few days going into September 1.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, fellow panelists. These are, it's an overdone term, most consequential elections, but I really do believe they are. There's nothing in terms of finances that are at stake as has ever happened in Guyana. They're also perhaps the most difficult to predict. I recall I've been through the 1992 elections. We saw after the 28 years of the PNC economic, political, social challenges faced by the country at the hands of the PNC administration. The people went back and voted in 1992, just as they did at the last spring and fair elections in 1964. So we had the WPA, New Kids on the Block. Walter Rodney had been killed, but much was being made of his own association with the party. In this case, we have Mr. Azruddin Mohammed, a new, really new entrant on the political scene And quite frankly, he's creating a buzz that we have not seen ever in Guyana, perhaps, except during the Walter Rodney era. So it's very, very difficult. The campaign is generally good, but we've seen serious accusations thrown, allegations made across the floor. The Carter Center has very unusually come out with a pre-election assessment. I know GHK suggested I should comment on that. All I can say, well, again, it reminds me of the National Insurance Scheme, and the actuary, he kept making the same recommendations throughout from 92, throughout the 90s, the early part of the century. And he said, look, you know what? I'm just going to put back all my previous recommendations on the table. I think the Carter Center, the EU, maybe the Commonwealth Observer Mission might all say the same thing. We are saying the same thing. We're making the same points: campaign financing, misuse of state resources, unfair practices, and nothing changes. So maybe we just, that may have impelled the Carter Center to make the kind of intervention that they have in fact made.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ram. Professor, just commenting on the type of election that we in Guyana is at a different level now. It's pretty much on the map, and it's not on the map because of Jim Jones, but rather on the oil discoveries. We probably on every diplomat desk they are throughout the world. And a report like this, of course, would be circling among State Department officials, think tankers, etc. But on the election itself, given what is at stake, how do you see it from your visibility in terms of what is been unfolding and what you foresee for the next few days?
Yeah, let me thank you for the invitation as always, and say good evening to the audience, and certainly good evening to GHK Lal and to Christopher Raman. So I think from where I sit, I think this is I will repeat, I think it is the most consequential election that Guyana has had in our history. And I say this because precisely as Christopher Ram noted, the question of finances. I've tried to make this point. We've been noting in the we've been noting in the newspapers and on the internet and so on. The question of Guyana has 750,000 people and the voters list is. And, I have a different take. In 2027 or so, with the addition of the new FPSO, I think they estimate that we're going to be producing close to 900,000 barrels of oil a day. 900,000 barrels is more than the number of people in Guyana. So I think you're looking at a situation where there is more than a barrel of oil per day per person in Guyana. And so the issue, as I see it, is not a question of do we have the resources now. I think this election is kind of coming, and this goes to where I think the emergence of Mr. Mohammed. So it's not a question of resources. So it is a question now in the minds of the electorate as to who will most equitably and fairly distribute this resource. You see, it's not a question now of like, what's the plan to get the money? We know where the money is. The plan now is how much of this will trickle to me. And so I think that this is, if you will, the vacuum that Mr. Mohammed has stepped into, in a sense that people are projecting onto him the sense of this is someone who is new and therefore can be feared. I will have a different thought about this later, but I think that that's where we are. So I genuinely think that there is very strong support in all that I've read for Win. I still do think, however, that the PPP will maintain some significant aspect of its base. I still do think that the PNC and the APNU coalition will maintain some strong semblance of its base. I do think that parties like FGM and WIN will capitalize on some of this new mood. And so, as things have moved forward, I would not be surprised to find that no party emerges with 33 seats in the parliament. And then I think we're going to have a very interesting ride in the next few days. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Professor. I'd like to welcome Miss Michelle Johnson, looking on from Guyana. We also have a very, very loyal viewer from Canada, Mr. Colin Singh. Love to meet you one day, Mr. Singh. Every one of Globespan program you're on. And we have Mr. Neva Sital, who is always comments tend to be very colorful, but we welcome you, Mr. Sital. Mr. GHK, tell us from your visibility, what do you see unfolding, and how do you view things for the next few days?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My pleasure to be here with the panelists. Dr. Blackman, my commendations on achieving full professorship at Medgar Evers. Mr. Ram, good to be here with you. Fellow Guyanese viewers, listeners, my pleasure to serve you. Elections. We're not talking about anything but elections right now. We're not even talking about oil. We're not talking as much about oil. Although the elections coming up that's in the air, whether we say it or not, it is about what comes from the oil. And it is interesting that Mr. Ram spoke of 1992 and how the electorate voted in the same way. What is interesting today, and it's not quite a parallel, what is interesting is Mr. Mohammed has his past. He has been sanctioned. That's official, that's public. He has been called a Venezuelan puppet. A mountain of offal has been thrown at him. And yet, folks, the people flock to him. It does not seem to matter. Is it a matter of optics? I think it is very much a matter of the distrust that has festered and is now boiling over in full public view in favor of Mr. Mohammed, is that we know from the very, very rich headlines that Guyana is doing well. I heard the professor say, this is not about resource anymore. We are there, yes. So the resources are there, but why am I not there too? And I think that is where Mr. Mohammed, his footprint grows larger daily. It grows even more visibly, whichever community he goes into. There is something that we have to factor in here. People are afraid to write a letter. People are afraid to step in public and protest or raise a hand on an issue that may matter to them. So that has come back to haunt the ruling People's Progressive Party in terms that they are not even assured of where their own voting base is. So I think that redounds to Mr. Mohammed's credit, but let's not count out either the PPP or the PNC. I mean, it will take a upheaval, a political earthquake to rock that base significantly, those bases significantly. Will Mr. Mohammed make inroads into the basis of the PNC and the PPP, I say yes. The question is how much so. He has his own following, and I think what we are seeing here is that the indigenous vote, which has long been termed the swing vote, it, in my opinion, my assessment, it has swung, and in swinging, it has really knocked the PPP sideways, and it has fallen into the lap. It has swung into the lap of the Wind people. Look, I don't want to talk too much
Yeah.
about the Wind people because I'm not going to discount Dr. Jagdeo and his
Yeah.
efforts, or Mr. Norton and his efforts with the two larger parties. But we must acknowledge, we must recognize that there is something different in the people don't care about what his
Yeah.
record is. And so now with the Carter Center putting out its report, so at this juncture, it
Yeah.
certainly is something that gives them a little impetus, because it's saying, well, yes, you are being recognized, and all the things that were being done against you, those also have been recognized,
Yeah.
and those mean that you are doing something right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. G. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Jamal Aziz. He's watching us from Berbice. So we do have Canada, Berbice, other parts of Guyana, and the United States onto this program, and the numbers are building. Mr. Ram, there's lots of talk about the bases, the PPP base, the APNU base. But the base traditionally has been the older folks that grew up within the time frame of the dictatorship and then post-dictatorship, Dr. Jagan. But what we are seeing carving out within the WIN group is more of a younger crowd. This is the young generation. And if you listen to some of the social media posts, they're like, we're not going to be fooled. They did not go through that whole process. Are you seeing the same thing, Mr. Ram, that this is just a new generation coming up, a younger generation who are not going to go down that road of racial division and going back to what Professor Blackman mentioned, what is at stake really on the financial side of things? Mr. Ram, do you see it from that perspective?
There's certainly a massive change taking place. Now, of course, this is perhaps the first elections where we have the kind of technology at work. In terms of the basis, I do believe it transcends just race or even age. We have to accept that Muhammad is a phenomenon that we've not seen 30, 40, 50 years ago. I know my two colleagues spoke of what's happening, what might have caused something, but I also believe there's a negative element. Look, we've got, despite all the talk, and this really upsets me, when I looked at the manifestos and I did a comparison of all the manifestos, none of them speaks of the minimum wage, which is $300 per month. You're encouraging the abuse of your own people. The cost of living has not been such a big issue. Why it is, Sabbath News has run almost 200 articles, and people across races, across ages, across communities are saying, look, we just can't make it. So there's an element that, look, people are kind of, they feel betrayed, they feel a sense of dissatisfaction, a sense of frustration that they're not part of this great oil economy. As Sharon said, yes, 1 barrel of oil per day each of us can have, but how is it translating to the average person? And it really is not. And I would have thought the manifestos would spend more time thinking of how do we plan the economy, get it moving, get the people. We talk about 60,000 persons being employed. The entire construction industry now taken by the Venezuelans and the Chinese. We don't have statistics. We don't have a census. We don't even know how many people are really going to vote.
Yeah.
So, we're a strange society. we've moved into all this IT and technology world, and we don't have basic information.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mr. Ram, if you don't mind, just a sidebar, could you take 2 minutes and bring us up to date on that quest to get information? I know you were protesting, you were filing court documents. Just give us an update. Take a couple of minutes on that.
Well, interestingly, thank you so much. Interestingly, the Vice President, Barjagdeo, has said that after elections, the government will ensure that we get information. But look, we have a right under the Constitution 146. We have a right under the Access to Information Act. We have a Commission of Information. There's absolutely no reason. And I must say, I'm glad to see that the Carter Center, in its interim report, has flagged this issue. It's a major consideration. So again, we're groping for information when we have the most consequential election facing us. So we seem to be making some progress. The group itself is meeting with some of the observers. I think it's a matter of fact. And we will continue to push this because we have a right. You cannot make proper decisions unless you have information. And you cannot have information unless you have a working access to information facility. And we don't have it. Mr. Jagdeo said we're going to get it after elections. I don't know why that has to be a post-election obligation. We've had the legislation since 2011. Why do we have to wait until then?
Constitutional right to be able to get the information so that you could be able to contribute more effectively towards the development of the country. Professor Blackman, I want to go back to the base, and the point I was trying to make is that the base, as we know it traditionally, has been, of course, the Afro-Guyanese towards the APNU PNC and Indo-Guyanese towards the PPP. But given the phenomena that everyone is identifying with WIN, do you see that base now becoming smaller and smaller, and more people are moving towards issues with a level of independence, and what is it in for them, not for their race? Do you see that?
I still think I think these ethnic patterns for the lack. I think these patterns will hold. As I've thought about the WIN candidacy, there's a certain vagueness to it, right? So it's like a kind of it's filling a vacuum that's sort of left by weak institutions that Mr. Ram just described. That the Bureau of Statistics. I saw this argument around we had 70,000 new jobs created, but there's no data that can actually back up these claims, right? So it's sort of the WIN candidacy is sort of emerging as a kind of commodification of credibility. It's filling a vacuum left by these weak institutions. It's like a performance art, and the electorate is fragmented, and so in a way, I think Azzuddin Mohammed and the WIN candidacy it's about us. It's the kind of politics that we have allowed, and it also speaks to the lack of credibility, as was noted, of the traditional parties and the underperformance of the state institutions and the sort of broad incentive structures in the society, right? So we're going to reward now a kind of charisma over clarity of the plans that Mr. Ram just described, and sort of broad patronage over any real policy.
Yeah.
So I still think that at the end of the day, this patronage over policy is what will drive the thing, and I think people will devolve back into their sort of ethnic camps, or at least they will not stray far from these ethnic camps. It's surprising, but I think this thing has a very strong hold on us, and what I will say though is that even if WIN does not win, right? I think its emergence Because I would also add the Forward Guyana movement to that, and I would also, I mean, we haven't said anything about the AFC, but I think the AFC was a sort of precursor of this, this meaningful middle where people could talk about the ideas that mean something for Guyana. So I think maybe WIN is the catalyst for breaking this open, but I don't see them, breaking it open in on September 1.
Yeah.
Mr. Mohammed might think differently, but I will reserve judgment.
Yeah, yeah. And Mr. GHK, Mr. Jonas, always on this program repeats the same, that at the ending of the day, the reality of this is that the base will revert back to their camps. And I purposely disagrees with him, not because it's not the reality, but because I want to be able to have a hope that yes, this is going to be broken at some point. I'm hearing tonight from Mr. Ram and and Professor Blackman that at the ending of this all, most will return back to their base. Am I wrong? Am I seeing the wrong light here? Am I reaching out to see? Is it far reaching to say that we are the cups of breaking this race-based voting? Is that too far reaching, Mr. GHK?
Well, Mr. Mohammed, the WIN Group is the litmus test. He is perhaps what we can expect for the future, because he has come out of nowhere. The man does not know economics. The man does not know politics. The man does not know civics. The man does not know physics. But the people gravitate to him in terms of the base of the traditional ethnic bases resorting to form. Per Mr. Jonas, I don't think this is where I stand. Look at the environment that we have seen in the past several months. The people that are flocking to him are mainly from the largest demographic of this country, the younger people. Many of them have never voted in their lives, took the time to vote, or had the interest to vote. But they are out there. They are out there. So these non-voters now are so disgusted with their economic status, with their economic realities, the grueling nature of it, that they're like, yes, Guyana is doing so well, but I am doing so poorly. I am stuck. I am not going anywhere. And it's not for lack of ambition. It is not for lack of interest and energy. And therefore, the other guys have been around there, one for 33 years, not in a sequence, and the other for 28. And what have we gotten? This newer generation does not know or care, I think, about Burnham and Jagged. What they know is that we are talking about money and money and money in this country, and we don't have it. And our prospects with the two major parties do not look as bright as they think, for whatever reason, that they would look under the WIN Group, the WIN umbrella. So I think that, as I said earlier, that the basis of the two big parties, the PPP and the PNC, it will stay intact to some extent. What we need to make a call on, and I'm going to make a call on that right now, is what is the extent of the erosion of that base in favor of Azruddin Mohammed? Is it significant? I don't think I'll go that far, but is it meaningful enough?
Yeah.
Is it meaningful enough to make a difference for him? And I think that that's where it is. And he certainly is going to make inroads in the indigenous community.
Yeah.
Right? So that's clear. And I feel that it's showing, the optics are that the younger demographic, the biggest one in Guyana, they are moving towards him. And is it cross racial racial streams. I think there's some of that. We know that there are people who are not comfortable coming out. We know there are people who are fearful of coming out. So let's not forget that hidden demographic, that silent demographic. Is it the Richard Nixon silent majority? I don't think so, but it is certainly meaningful enough, and it will. I do not think we will have this thing where we're going to have the PPP and PNC close in a neck and neck and win somewhere far behind. I think he's going to be somewhere in the middle there.
Okay, so there's a light of hope for the Guyanese people that there seem to be a little breakage on the race voting. Hopefully that could materialize in something substantial, moving the country more towards an independent thinking country that could vote on issues that matters to the nation. I seen someone post that we should have had Joel Bagwadian on this program to balance it. With the type of caliber of speakers that we have here tonight, invitation did go out to the former Prime Minister Sam Hines, Sanjeev Dattadin. That's the type of caliber of men that we would like to have on this panel. Neither of them responded. So we'll continue to invite, we'll continue to get a broader base, hopefully that we could have a much more expanded discussion. Just a comment, or rather, I'd like to advise all of our viewers that starting on Monday, from the 26th to September 2nd, Globespan will be on every night starting from next week, Monday to September 2nd, and hopefully it will not be necessary to go on to September 3rd to get the final results of the election. We'll be covering all aspects of the manifesto, comparison of the manifesto, and then we'll subsection each education, agriculture, different aspect of the economy. So starting next week, Monday, every night we would have Globespan 24/7 until September 2nd. Our next topic tonight was a contentious topic. It has been came more heavily into the news circuit in the past week or two, and that is the closing, the banks closing, GBTI, Citizen Bank, and Demerara Bank closing their accounts. Now, since about a month ago, Globespan wrote an op-ed and read that op-ed on this program here, calling for Demerara Bank to rescind their decision to close accounts based on political affiliation. Having said that, subsequent to that op-ed, we had President Donald Trump. He came out with an executive order discussing banks should not take punitive measures based on any political affiliation. And subsequent to his to the president executive order, we also had OFAC issued a statement about a week ago clarifying its position regarding secondary sanction. And then on August 19, the Carter Center mentioned also about this bank situation. And to quote the Carter Center, while the center recognizes the banking sector's caution, the relevant Financial Action Task Force and OFAC standards and guidelines recommend a risk-based approach to such matters and discourages overcompliance with practices such as blanket account closure, unquote. So I want to go to the OFAC statement because that's the crux of the matter. They deal with it directly coming from OFAC. Devin, do you have that video?
The implications of transacting with a political party led by an individual sanctioned by OFAC or with members of such a political party would depend on whether the sanctioned individual is involved in the transaction. For example, U.S. financial institutions would not violate sanctions for maintaining the account of or processing a transaction involving a non-sanctioned organization or non-sanctioned members of that organization, solely because another member of that organization is sanctioned. However, U.S. financial institutions would be prohibited from engaging in such transactions if the sanctioned individual has an interest in the accounts or transactions. Unless exempt or otherwise authorized by a general or specific license from OFAC, transactions with sanctioned persons by U.S. persons are generally prohibited, and non-U.S. persons could also face sanctions risk for certain activities involving sanctioned persons, such as providing material support to them. If there are particular fact scenarios at issue, we encourage the relevant financial institution to reach out directly to OFAC through the OFAC Compliance Hotline. Please be advised that OFAC will not direct an entity to conduct activity that undermines its policies and procedures.
Mr. Ram, there's no point of us spending too much minutes litigating this again. I think OFAC statement is clear. There is no secondary sanction here, and no one should be penalized for having any affiliation other than a material transaction. Where I want to take this discussion, Mr. Ram, this is setting precedents where we have the private sector interceding during an election process, what may have been deemed as election interference, or taking a position of their own liking. Where I want to take this part of the discussion, Mr. Ram, is that where do we go from here now? The bank more than likely will probably come out and say they have their internal risk assessment. But at the ending of the day, innocent rice farmers, innocent teachers, they were victimized here. And this is not something that we should allow to set the precedence from any part of the private sector as Guyana continues to develop in a new trajectory of becoming a nation that can be able to even afford to help other nations. So where do we go from here, Mr. Ram? How could we be able to avoid such thing happening again?
Well, I am very, very disturbed that there are two regulators involved here, the Bank of Guyana and the Financial Institution Unit, Financial Intelligence Unit. Neither of them has said anything about this unilateral action by two of the commercial banks. We have a fairly robust anti-money laundering framework in Ghana. We're perhaps the most compliant of all the countries. We have a system of dealing with politically exposed persons. We have enhanced due diligence. But no, what happened here, two of the commercial banks have just decided, look, we will take unilateral action. Not like if they were facing a tax issue, they get together and say, let's deal with it. Here, two of them decide, well, we are going to take unilateral action. Now, if this had happened anywhere else, those banks ought to have been, the banks ought to have been sanctioned. They should recompense the customers who they had discontinued. I've seen stories, there's a data breach and you have to compensate, that type of thing. But we still have, with all the oil we're talking about, we still have a cake shop culture. We still have a situation where regulatory issues, where tax issues might be discussed and decided, not where they ought to be, but at a political level. So what I think has happened, WIN has actually earned support as a result of this high-handed action and unjustified action by these two commercial banks. But quite frankly, I'm surprised that they haven't taken legal action. No one has taken legal action. They ought to be made, something ought to be done to say, look, we cannot act in this way. We are regulated. We have a duty. These are not private. They have special privileges in our society. And for them to act as unilaterally, and of course, it's not only the banks. We've seen that, Mr. Mohammed his people cannot get into the interior to campaign. GCOM shuts its mouth. And, that's another story, whether GCOM has really done a good job. It wakes up every 5 years. So we do have some serious problems with all the money we have. And this here was a good example of how high-handedness goes unpunished in our
Yeah.
society.
Yeah. You know, Mr. Ram, the last sentence by OFAC, please be advised that OFAC will not direct an entity to conduct activity that undermines its policies and procedures. Now, OFAC has its policies and procedures, and in a case like this, that could be read or interpreted as do not use OFAC to justify their action. So yeah, I think there's a lot of damages here. But Professor Blackman, this goes beyond Guyana. This is well, it goes beyond just the banks. This is setting a precedence here of interference, and as Dr. Terence Campbell has pointed out, it's a different way of skewing an election. Now, I remember seeing a fantastic video, a presentation by Prime Minister Mia Mottley before the United States Senate, trying to reason as why is it the banks in the Caribbean are treated in such a subjective manner. But with actions like these, how could you discount not being treated in this manner? And Professor Blackman, if you could just focus a little too in terms of how is it that we could be able to take this beyond election and continue so that this does not occur again from our private sector?
If you permit me, Nohar, to as I was listening to Christopher Ram and thinking about your earlier comment around the invitation that was extended to the various parties who are, nominally representatives of the government. I think when you note the government, consistently not being present in forums or programs that are perceived as independent of the ruling party, so to speak. Todd, I don't fault. Every administration has to decide where to devote its time and energy, and but the point is, and I'm being sort of mild here, that the absence of a certain kind of participation in certain settings, they narrow the opportunities for dialogue, and they weaken the perception of openness and diverse perspectives. And I think at this moment in the national development, this kind of inclusive dialogue across sectors, and this is the point I want to make, Guyanese citizens at home, Guyanese abroad, we should expect a government that is confident enough to engage in open, sometimes difficult conversations in every forum, whether convened by its allies or convened by independent actors, right? So this business of the banks is exactly the same. The conversation has been narrowed, and so the banks they're complying before they know what the expectation is in order to be on the side that is appropriate. And so they're picking a winner in some very real way, and they're saying, here is what I'm doing for you. And I think if we don't see these as all sort of, so I see this not just as a question of I see this not just as an issue that is narrowly located to the bank, but it's also a broader sort of governance issue, a broader issue of sort of narrowing the kinds of spaces in which the government would reasonably want to participate. Right? They ought to participate. They ought to be confident enough to do that. I mean, why would someone? And so they're essentially sort of saying, look, we don't want to compete in a very reasonable way with Mr. Mohammed. We don't want to give him and we're going to use the tools that are available. And I think that it's appropriate to call them out. Now, having said that, I would say that there are legitimate issues that were raised by many people in terms of, banks being able to, conduct business in the United States and having a corresponding bank and so on. But I think the sort of, look, Mr. Mohammed has not been charged with a crime in Guyana. He's not been charged with a crime. He's a citizen. Some time ago, we were here, I think GHK Allen, we were here on this program, and we made this point that, an assertion of Guyana's sovereignty in this context is something that is important. And I think what we see here is a ruling party tipping the playing field. And we should say that tipping the playing field that makes it difficult for Mr. Mohammed to compete because they don't want to have that larger conversation. There's a tendency towards narrowing that conversation. And I think it's unfortunate because, really one expects the ruling party to take full advantage of all of the platforms, not as adversarial spaces, but as opportunities to demonstrate leadership and accountability to the Guyanese people.
Yeah. And Professor Blackman, for your knowledge and for the viewers' knowledge, the PPP were frequent on the Globespan platform while they were in opposition and even post winning the election. Many of the PPP members have been on Globespan, and I believe the Vice President and President Ali was also on Globespan in the earlier days with Dr. Rose. And certainly the AG Anil Nandalal, we've had the Prime Minister Sam Hines. As a matter of fact, the last time Prime Minister Sam Hines was on, he was on with Dr. Betoram Ramarak, and he took it a bit harsh. The Betoram kind of went at him a little too much. But yeah, it came to a point where I guess the lack of having more control of what Globespan does in terms of trying to widen the scope of discussion. I will continue to invite them, Professor Blackman.
The point I'm making is that engaging with independent people gives you the opportunity to showcase a commitment to national unity. And to listen to citizens across the political spectrum. It seems a reasonable thing. And so I see that as tied to this question of the banks. The banks are only listening to one voice. And they're saying, we have narrowed the dialogue that we are going to listen to, and we're going to comply, because we understand that is what the expectation is from us in this moment. And, there's no one else saying to the banks, look, you don't have to do this. You don't have to, close the account of a rice farmer someplace because he is, politically supporting the Win party. So I think that one has to say that unequivocally, and one hopes that the ruling party and all ruling parties will find it in Guyana going forward as a meaningful thing to do, to engage with their citizens, whether or not they perceive them as being supporters or not being supporters.
Yeah. So a month ago when we brought up the bank issue and we did that op-ed, I got a call from someone in Orlando, and he said to me, look, Noah, I've known you for many years. I think what you're trying to take on here is not right. It's not that it's not right, it's just that you're taking on a very big establishment. So I said, this is not about the win candidates, this is about the people, someone standing up for the people issues. And he went on to bring in the name Christopher Ram. And he mentioned it in the context that he's one of the last standing Mohicans putting up a fight for the people. So Mr. Ram, a little plug there for you. You have folks out in Orlando who thinks you are one of the fighters for the people. But clearly Globespan took on this bank issue mainly from a people standpoint. It is something that should not be allowed to set precedents for any election to come. Mr. GHK, just a couple more minutes on this, and we want to move on to our next topic here. But this hurts the indigenous banks. This really, people are saying that they cannot, Colin Haynes was on Globespan a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that he would be concerned of people getting access to their bank accounts or information about their bank. And this goes beyond government. We have seen the rise of gangs within the Caribbean. This brings in the credibility of indigenous companies or indigenous, in this case, the banks, but rather the credibility of indigenous companies if you want to be able to be a patriotic citizen to support your own businesses within your country. What's your take on that?
It's an uncomfortable question because I've got to come out against my own folks, but I still must address it. I am not comfortable as a remigrant dealing with domestic institutions, flat out, because the government has shown that it can access, it can get things leaked, Look at Terence Campbell. Look at his tax business. And he's one. There's another one that I'm trying to remember that is eluding me right now. It seems that when information is needed to be put out there to make someone look in a bad light, it gets out there when the highest degree of confidentiality should be there. We want to buy local, so to speak. We want to support our local institutions. I want to do that. But there must be the comfort that the tentacles of the government or the authorities or whomever does not breach the walls that should be protecting me and other citizens. So when we look at what has happened here, clearly something went on that caused the bank to think that it has to overreact, and it did, and to overcomply, as the Carter Center said, and it did. So if these two banks did as they did, then where is the line drawn, and what is the comfort given to people, whether it's me or you or whomever in Guyana, that look, you're in good hands, your stuff is secure, you can rest easily because we will do the right thing. The right thing was not done here with Miss Primus and others. And so what are the lessons learned? The first lesson that should be learned, I think, is that an apology should be written to those people. Some statements should be made publicly, and some sort of incentive should be given to them to remain as customers of those banks. That fellow should be reinstated if he's reinstated by now. What's his name? Corwin Austin. Just for and that's not OFAC related, I think. That's more politically tinged. But the fact is, we must not have this knee-jerk reaction because of political loyalty or thinking of political expectations or reacting by harming people. If I was in that position, I would have filed. I would have filed a legal challenge because it is just wrong. It is just too much, and it's one step too far for us to continue to absorb. And somebody's got to stand up and say, this thing has got to end, and I'm going to be the one to test it and to push it. And I think that's where we ought to be.
Yeah.
Can I make one more point on? I know you want to move on, but I think it's important to say that, you know, the electoral fairness is at stake, and I think that the banking actions that extended beyond the regulatory necessity, you know, it was aimed at chilling political participation and disrupting the wind sailed. I mean, I think that's, and you know,
Dr. Blackman, I love your choice of words. Chilling.
Yeah. Look, the banks have to be. Oh, I mean, the OFAC people said they clarified the sanctions apply only to designated persons.
Yeah,
and they do not instruct banks to act beyond that. So know, I mean, you know, the bankers can always say, well, you know, we're a bank and we have to be, but I think someone has to call them to task for this kind of.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, Professor Blackman, you know, this has to go beyond September 1st, 2nd. This has to be a discourse and a conversation that we continue, so that if it is Guyana has an opportunity to become part of the first world and don't stay in that narrative of being a banana republic, we need to have these sort of discussions. And definitely, I will not use your word chilling. This action of the banks may be construed as election interference, and that's as bold as it could be. And I think this is not only about the banks; it's really about the people and what is their rights. I want to move on. We kind of I got quite a few more things I want to get on the table. I am having a challenge bringing this out because I want to be able to bring out the point I'm trying to get to our viewers tonight is that we have so much at stake, yet we have, in the parallel way, we have all this asset. God has blessed Guyana with a tremendous amount of asset, gold, minerals, agriculture, now oil and gas, etc. And parallel to all this asset, we have a series of events that are taking place Some come to light and it just kind of dies off in the news cycle. We have no formal investigations or nothing. So I just want to start with this one video to just kind of get the viewer synthesized that there's more value to Guyana than just what we're dwelling in. And this video is from Glenn Lyle, and it talks about the goal. So Devin, could you go to that video for me, please?
These people making no less than 1 ton of gold, which is 32,150 ounces per day. Guess how much? Xinjiang, one Chinese company in our back dam, declared at the gold board. I was told for 2021 and 2022, less than 1.5 ton a year. Gold, what this company make a day, them a declare a year.
So the point I'm trying to bring out there is that I know on the table now is oil and gas, and as Professor Blackman mentioned, we are moving up to 900,000 barrels per day, more than the population of Guyana. And of course, with that will come something projected of, I believe, 10 million earnings per day for Guyana. But in addition to the oil and gas, we have all these other assets that are there that could literally make every Guyanese a millionaire. And we haven't been able to realize these assets. We have not been able to realize what, God's gifting to every Guyanese through the country of Guyana. Because parallel to all of this asset, we have these sort of activities that are just not consistent to what would be a prosperous country. So Devin, go to that video for me and Junior Baksh video.
So we started with small amounts meaning 40, 50 million.
Small amounts.
Yes.
Okay.
And then it grew. Just like his construction company grew.
Right.
From getting small contracts from millions to hundreds of millions, and now he's getting contracts for billions of Guyana dollar. He would know of these contracts before it's published, before he would know upfront, long before anybody else would know about it, because it's being promised to him. So he would come to me with that information and make proposals to me and tell me you need money because you gotta give a drawback.
So we have the Junior Baksh video making what would be deemed as some accusations. And we don't know the facts, but we would never seem to know the facts because there's no formal investigations. There are no, these things come up on the news reel and then they just die off. There's just no way of us knowing what the actual facts are. We don't know what the actual facts on that video that Mr. Glenn Lal, because going back to the beginning of this program, we asked Mr. Ram on in terms of his quest to get information from the government. The State Department April 2025 report said corruption within law enforcement, bribery, and nepotism in the public sector and political entities further complicate the fight against drug trafficking, adding to the authorities often drop charges or never file them and do not conduct serious investigations. My God, my dear viewers, my fellow Guyanese brothers and sisters, look what we have at stake and what we are losing. Think about the families that were separated, families who went to live in different countries, those who had to be migrated, then had their papers, couldn't go back to funerals. And with all of that that's been happening, there is an enormous amount of wealth that is passing out of Guyana that you as a Guyanese are not being able to access. So Mr. Ram, could you just say a few words towards that? I mean, what could we tell the Guyanese people what they need to move away from so they could start realizing the blessings that God has given them.
You know, just looking at that clip makes me so sad. These things are happening whilst we have politicians say, oh, we have the most transparent system in the world. Every agreement is tabled in the National Assembly. Those are blatant misrepresentations of facts. You can call them lies if you wish. Now, we have an Investment Act, for example. It requires that all tax holidays be granted, be tabled in the National Assembly, and a special audit be done. It's not done. There are no investigations, as you said, there's no information. I'm doing a piece I started last week when we had the parallel economy. You know, for us who lived through the 70s and 80s, we know about the parallel economy, just the bag and toilet paper and bread and cheese and those things. Now you have a parallel economy that it's almost difficult to quantify because of the type of information we're seeing on the screen a moment ago. And it all comes back to governance. It comes back to honest management of the economy, which we have been lacking. And this is what helps to fuel that support for Azruddin Mohammed, because we know these things are happening. We have some ideas happening, but they're happening out of sight. That's that gold company somewhere deep into the interview. We don't know about it. The same thing is happening with timber, so many other things. We don't know, and the government just is not prepared to share information. All we know is that you have foreign exchange problems with all the oil. Dr. Blackman was correct, pointing out how much, but where is all of this going? We're drawing down on the Natural Resource Fund. So we are bringing in foreign exchange. Yet where is it going? And again, you're not having any proper accounting. You don't have periodic accounting. The Bank of Ghana does produce some statistics, the reserves and the money they sell to the system, and they don't ever buy. But we have a parallel economy, Mr. Moderator, that we do not appreciate or understand its scale and its danger. And unless we are very careful, all this oil wealth can turn out to be what is traditionally called the oil curse, simply because we are not controlling, we're not opening the economy to the people, we're not publishing information, nothing gets shared with the people.
Yeah.
I can't be optimistic. I'm sorry.
We'll try to get there, Mr. Ram. We'll try to get to an optimistic with some hopes for the people. But this is the price we are paying when we talk about choosing race, political parties over the interest of the countries. Because the interest of Guyana is being compromised, you yourself as a citizen of Guyana, it's puts at a disadvantage. Now, we're in an election environment right now. And Devin, could you just go to that tape on the Carter Center comments on a couple of these matters here?
Misuse of state resources and state media. The Carter Center has received multiple allegations from political parties and civil society that the ruling party has misused state resources. Social media and news reports are also rife with photographs suggestive of this problem. The use of state resources for party campaigning runs contrary to Guyana's international obligations with respect to campaign finance. The Carter Center has received reports alleging that the ruling party has used state-owned vehicles to campaign and taken advantage of 10-day workers, employed part-time by the government, in campaign activities. Official government statements about the opening of schools and other public buildings regularly feature public officials in full ruling party regalia, blurring the line between the state and the party. Since July 30, the president has announced he would promote over 2,800 Guyana Police Force officers. On August 1, the government announced that bridge crossings would now be free. These and similar measures can be seen to afford the ruling party an unfair advantage. While Guyana's laws do not prohibit new government spending after an election is called, such spending runs contrary to international standards and best practices, intended to ensure a level playing field. Although the Carter Center is not conducting systematic media monitoring, the mission has noted and received reports indicating that state media coverage appears to be biased in favor of the ruling party. Several political parties reported limited access to state media, with their events receiving little or no coverage, and one party alleged they were denied the opportunity to place advertisements in state media in the absence of specific legal provisions regulating media conduct during the electoral period. The Carter Center encourages state media to provide equal treatment to all political parties. Access to public information. Access to information is a critical means of ensuring informed public participation and transparency and accountability in the electoral process. Elections conducted in the absence of adequate public access to information, including on key election-related matters, harm the electoral process. A well-informed electorate is essential to any electoral process and is an essential building block of a meaningful democracy. 5. Cumulative shortcomings such as timely completion and publication of the census, the absence of campaign and party finance data, limited information around GECOM decision-making, and obstacles faced by some media outlets and citizens in obtaining public information constitute a lack of adequate public access to election-relevant information. The UN Human Rights Committee, in its May 2024 report, noted concerns that the Commissioner of Information does not respond to all requests and urged Guyana to ensure the right of access to information is effectively exercised.
Thank you, Devin. And the General Secretary today mentioned that, if I could just read, the General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party on Wednesday accused the United States-based Carter Center for issuing a pre-election statement that contains glaring omissions about the political climate in the country. Professor Blackman, I don't want to ask you to comment on the content itself. I think the report speaks for itself. But you being based in the United States here, this report will go to the State Department desk. It will go to many think tank organizations out there. It would go to a lot of scholars, a lot of diplomats. I know I sent this report to a few diplomats today. I asked them as a favor, please read this report in full. Is this an opportunity here that whereby the diaspora itself can be able to engage folks in the United States and even diplomats throughout the world, that way they could affect some changes so that we could have a better transparency and accountability, not only in our election process, but also, of course, in our domestic affairs?
No, I think again, the first thing I always think, well, what do the numbers say? I actually had some small engagement with this with a colleague, and we checked on August 10 of the 18 DPI reports for the day, 17 covered the PPP party events, and one was a message from Marad. And that report is the only one that would actually fall under the mandate of public information, right? So the thing is, we are seeing the tipping of the playing field, and I think it's important for those of us who have an opportunity to, call balls and strikes, to be able to help to shape the guardrails. And I think, again, this is not dissimilar from the conversation we just had. Christopher M. is asking the question, can we manage our wealth with fairness and transparency and integrity? And that's the question. And in a sense, this is the question that's sitting in the ballot. And so the previous segment, the allegations raised by Junior Bash about corruption and gold smuggling, these are things that can't be brushed aside in the manner in which they were brushed aside, right? Whether we agree with him or not, these are issues that go to the heart of trust. And if people believe that we're tainted, and if they see evidence of tainted, then it undermines the confidence of everyone, and it ultimately hurts all of the ordinary Guyanese. To be clear, these allegations are not, they're not evidence. everyone is entitled to due process, but ignoring those claims, dismissing them without serious review, it erodes confidence. And it's precisely the kind of thing that I think the Carter Center is documenting in this context. And I think, to your point, at the end of the day, this is bigger than politics. It's not just about one party or another. It's about proving that we can effectively manage our national wealth, that we
Absolutely.
can self-govern.
Self-govern and taking our country to the next level.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's just the point I was trying to bring out.
Yeah.
Mr. GHK, how do we take a report? I mean, this report comes from Carter Center, very credible. So many countries they've been a part of. A report like this can be able to stand on its own merits, which we could be able, and you lived in the United States, Mr. GHK. This is a report that we could be able to leverage throughout the diplomatic community in bringing about or affecting positive changes, as Professor Blackman just mentioned, so our country could move to that next level. Do you see that? Do you see a report like this? Because it's quite a report. I've never seen the Carter Center come out with a report like this pre-election.
Well, in my conversations with people who are based here and some overseas, this is unprecedented in my memory. But let us not forget something, or let us remember something. The Carter Center was invited here by the government, by the PPP. The government likes to say, we have got the international community, elections observers, they are coming and they'll be here. And so they are here now. And I'm saying the Carter Center has pronounced, we have read it, seen it, heard it. The government has got to learn to say there are some things that are glaring here. There are some things that have to be addressed here. It's bigger than us. And if we are about honest leadership and transformational leadership and clean governance, here is something on which we can make a start. Access to information, use of state resources. We're talking specifically in the context of elections, but we need to broaden our minds and go beyond that. Access to information is not just an election thing per se, or the use of state resources, or access to the state media, campaign financing. Why do we have the same things being repeated 5 years later? Campaign financing, state media, and the use of state resources. Why do we have those repeating 5 years later, after the grueling 2020 elections took place? Have we not learned anything? Have we not implemented anything? Do these things not matter other than to bash another political party that was the ruling one at the time and say, oh, we got you, and this is what you gave to the Guyanese people, and this is what the world has seen. Now that there's an opportunity, and there's been a half a decade of opportunity to sort these things out, to make some progress with them, we have stalled. And now the first thing that comes out of the ruling of the government is that, oh, well, there were some glaring omissions here. Look, I have to say this, whether anybody here agrees with me or on the program, outside of the panelists. The government is held to a higher standard. The ruling party is held because it has got all the keys, or most of the keys, or the keys to most of the answers. And I think it has got to take the lead and set the example. Look, the other side did that when they were there. We are not going to go down that road. We're going to give access to information. We're going to allow fair access to state media. We do not fear anybody. We will encourage dialogue. We'll come on Globespan. We will participate. We will listen to opposing views, and we will do so honestly and openly. And we are not having that. So here's the question. Dr. Blackman, Mr. Ram, Mr. Moderator, and our audience. What are we doing differently in 2025 versus 2020 or before 2020? What are we doing better? Not only differently, but better. And if we can't say A, B, C, then we can't talk about transparency, we cannot talk about equity, we cannot talk about democracy, and we certainly cannot talk about accountability.
Right, right, right. And if we keep looking in the rear view mirror, we'll just crash if we're trying to move ahead. And these are all things that we need to have in a discussion process and be able to move ourselves up. And doing the same thing over and over, as you pointed out, obviously we would end up in the insane. Mr. Ram, I have this one question for you really that I just want to ask, and then I want to move to the other topic with Professor Blackman. The Gas to Shore project, it's very concerning, really. It started out, I believe, at 800 million. Now it's heading north of 1.5 billion, and it's clearly heading over $2 billion. Mr. Ram, are there any feasibility study to this gas to shore project? And already the project has not even materialized or come to fruition, but we have already lost at one case $100 million. I mean, in the context of where our people are at, and we are losing this type of money. And then, Mr. Ram, electricity in Guyana, I pulled one of my bills, not my bill, someone else's bills actually, and electricity is 26 to 32 cents per kilowatt hour. The talk in the media has always been we'll reduce electric. This project, which is going to cost close to over $2 billion, really is going to bring down electricity, they're saying about 50%, which will take us down to 13 cents per kilowatt hours. But for us to be competitive in the manufacturing sector, in the productivity sectors, we have to be around 5 cents per kilowatt hour. I'm asking you this because you're closer to all of these type of projects. I'm sure you've looked at it from different angles. I mean, where are we heading with a project like this if it is, when it does come to fruition, we are still not competitive?
Well, the first question you asked was about whether there was any study. I'm aware there was a study by the coalition government. I'm not aware there's been any study by the PPP government. We are also aware, and in a very roundabout way, the accounts of CNOOC disclosed that part of its future costs had something to do with the gas to energy project. Now, they have absolutely nothing to do with the gas to energy project. So again, we have a problem. It's a credibility problem. It's a truth problem. It's an information problem. Nobody knows what the true cost of the gas to energy project has been to date, which ought to be an objective number, and what is likely to be in future. And if I can quickly refer to the Carter Center report, the only problem I have with those are not allegations, those are facts. We monitor the newspapers on a daily basis. I saw Dr. Blackman give a particular, that one stood out indeed. I have that record. So the gas to shore project, yes, we need to get cheaper electricity. Is this method going to be the best possible thing? I don't think so. Why could we think, and not WIN, WIND, why couldn't we think of alternatives? We talk about corruption, and the vice president comes out and hits the Carter Center. Now, he himself was accused of corruption, and we've never decided. The government refused to consider that, look, we must clear the name of our vice president because he's such an important player in our political and country landscape. That was not done. It's almost like contempt for the country.
Yeah. So assets or riches are being eroding. Our people are still divided, and they're yet to realize their full potential in terms of what the riches will be. And this is the consequences of where we have chosen race, we have chosen political parties over what is good for the country. I want to move to the next topic because we are coming close to the program time. But I do want to get one point in there because we will run out. I am a God-fearing person, and I really need to bring in the God factor because with all that we have talked about tonight and all the previous programs, and looking at where Guyanese were, where they're at, and where they could be, I believe this is beyond me and many of you. The infractions, the inherent corruption, and the short-sighting behavior are so deep, it requires God's intervention. So I'm asking each one of you, my brothers and sisters, to join me with a specific request to God. We want to ask God, God, your eyes goes to and fro, seeing the injustice. Allow our eyes to see what you're seeing so we can call forth your will for Guyana. And to all of my brothers and sisters who do not believe in God, I want to appeal to you, to your conscience, to apply what is right and what is wrong for the country, not for a specific political party or not for a race. Let country come first, and that's going to be a road that would lead to prosperity to all Guyanese. I want to move on to the last topic here today. The oil and gas, as Mr. Ram pointed out in his last appearance in Globespan, we have about, it's finite, we have about 25 to 30 years. There's been a lot of talks of no renegotiations. Devin, you could just scroll that. There's been many, many instances when countries renegotiated their contracts. And now, in addition to that, from 2020 to 2025, we have had a budget of over $4.5 trillion. Professor Blackman pointed out 900,000 barrels of oil per day, earning a projected of 10 million US dollars per day. We have seen a lot of roads, a lot of schools, a lot of hospitals and bridges. Yes, but at the same time, are we seeing a balance between infrastructure and human development? Professor Blackman, I've been looking at most of the manifesto, and as Mr. Ram pointed out earlier in the program, there's no specific in terms of raising minimum salaries. And on one of Globespan program, we took an average salary of $150 with a 12% increase. It's about $2,500 per week after we factor in tax and inflation, which works out to just 12 US dollars per week. So this is a lot of information I just put out there, Professor Blackman. $10 million a day, $900,000 barrel of oil, all this gold for us. And yet we are seeing, look, our senior citizen, the manifesto of, I believe the PPP, moving senior citizens from $40,000 to $60,000 per month, $285 per month, $67 per week. My God, cost of living, where do we go from here? How do we get, no matter which government is is on the day, how do we get them to understand that there should be a balance between all of this capital expenditure and the balance of our human development being for Guyanese people?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think that ultimately that's where the things hinge between this balance between, infrastructure development and, human development. And I think if we were a normal country, this would have been the debate that we're having. I think, if you talked about the analysis of the manifestos, I looked clearly at both the manifestos of the APNU and the manifesto of the PPP and tried to compare those two to say, with the question of, who is more likely to bring poverty down? And you can see that the obvious things that occur. And in that way, you can see the fundamental policy difference between where we are. I think the PPP's logic is one that says, look, we're going to continue to do the kind of thing that we're doing now, which is, and so I don't want to, in this moment, I'm speaking purely in a policy sense. I'm not making a comment on, morality or anything, just saying in a pure policy sense, we've made a decision that the way to sustain, you mentioned this question of, the the money coming in, and it's going to be there for a finite amount of time. And so, when we get to that place 20 years along the line where we don't have oil, what is the bet that I have to make today in order to be able to realize the promise 20 years from now? And I think if you were to say in a purely policy sense, the PPP is making a bet. If assuming again that it's being implemented effectively and all of the other things, they're making a bet that, look, if we build the infrastructure, we do the electricity, we do all of these things now, we front load the money, then 20 years from now we will have it. And when this oil goes away, we're left with the infrastructure and the kind of economy and the place that we need in order to transition well. And okay, so we're not going to be able to reduce poverty by 10% in the next 2 years or 20%, but we're going to steadily push it down 3%, 3%, 4%, and so on. And I think if you look at the curve, you can see that, that would be a reasonable thing.
Yeah.
On the flip side, you have the sort of APNU position, which is to say, well, okay, look, we can, and it's clear if they were to do exactly what is said in the manifesto, that you can compute if poverty is $6.50 US, you can dramatically change the poverty profile of Guyana if you implemented the things that they've put in the manifesto on day one.
Yeah.
Now, again, there are going to be challenges there because, if you, inject that sort of money into the economy, you have to begin to think, how do you manage things so that you don't erode the purchasing power of the money so that, now you're getting 100,000 or 200,000, but it's really buying what 20,000 could have bought. So I think that is the crux. I mean, if you ask me, this is the crux on which this election is being fought.
Yeah.
And certainly coming back to Win, I think, Win has two things going for it. It has presented a similar kind of, we're going to alleviate, eradicate poverty, and we have the man who can do it. You have to believe that our guy is going to be able to do it. And so I think that's the crux of the game. But our folks have to begin to understand the scale of the numbers that you've just described and to understand what that really means in the context of what we can afford and what we can do, and to have some genuine balance around thinking both sides of this coin. Building the infrastructure, you have to do that. Doing things to bring the electricity down, you have to do that. But you also have to do the schools and the hospitals, and you also have to have teachers and so on. And so it requires a collective national sense. And I think this is the thing that, unfortunately, we're not seeing enough of in this moment.
Yeah. And just a post by Leland Rupnarain regarding the Gas to Show project. It will meet the same fate like Skeldon, Amelia Falls. It's all bound to fail after 2 years overdue, and court battles are already popping up. Excuse me. So not very positive from
I always
Leland.
want to. I think I'm always one to say we should be skeptical but not cynical. And the skepticism is fine, but when you just assume that it's going to fail from the beginning, it's already it's already over budget and so on. But
we need the project.
Hold out the opportunity that it actually could work. Because we've already invested $2 billion in it.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Ram. We do need the project. We do need to bring down electricity. However, deeper feasibility study and of course, a better management of the project in itself needs to evolve. So, Mr. GHK, how could we get across to the viewers, and we're coming to closing time, so we'll have to kind of wrap up as last comments here. How do we get our viewers, and to the larger extent our Guyanese brothers and sisters, because many of them go back, they look at this program over the weekend, they sit down, and many of them have come forth and said how much the information they get from these programs, because they don't have all the shouting, all the colorful languages, etc. But it doesn't matter today's PPP, if it's PPP again, or if it's APNU or WIN, whichever government. We need to have these discussions. Cost of living, out of control, as Mr. Ram pointed out earlier. How do we get this message across that we need infrastructure, but there must be a balance to what, you know, with our human development and the interest of our Guyanese people, 50% poverty rate is unacceptable, especially since now we are going into 900,000 barrel a day. Mr. GSK, also make it your closing comments because we're coming to program time.
The political parties know what they want, whether it's the PPP, PNC, AFC, WIN, whomever. They know what they want. They want to get into that seat of government. The question for you and I and all of our fellow Guyanese, what do we want? What is it that we want? We've got the backing, the resource backing. So that box can be ticked. We've got public infrastructure. But what about the social infrastructure? We're talking about 20 years when the money is done, when the oil and gas starts to decline, when not as much money is coming in. What is it we want to see with our oil fund in terms of its level? We have been treated, and I'm going to have to abbreviate this, we have been treated here to a reverse Ponzi scheme. The government, when it puts out its record budgets, like to tell you, no new taxes year after year. But what they do is that with those freight charges and excise taxes, money is indeed, a little bit more money is in the hands of the Guyanese people, but 607 million, 1 billion and 002, 1.56 billion taken US taken out of our oil fund, whilst at the same time going to $6 billion in debt. So we're getting a little bit of tax relief now, or excise relief now, gasoline relief. So we feel good about ourselves, but the piper is going to have to be paid down the line when those debts have to be start repaying, when the oil fund does not have the cushion that it should have. Yes, we have roads. Yes, we have hospitals. The quality of them is not to be discussed now. But the fact is, where are the people? Are the people moving in tandem with the public infrastructure works? Can we say that there's a balance between public infrastructure and social infrastructure? I don't think that there is, and the gap is very, very far. My closing comment is this. You keep the people in darkness, you can't talk about democracy. When you fear the people end up fearing you, fearing the government, and they end up with those optics, those visuals that we are seeing, where they circle in blue, in a sea of blue around Mohammed. Is it enough to change the course of history in Guyana? We shall see.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. GHK. And Mr. Ram, closing comments, give the people some hope. How can we be able to continue to have discourse, discussions, agreements, so that the ending result will be the benefits for the people to improve their lives?
Well, we can start by having government people coming on your program and non-government people coming on the NCN and the state media in Guyana. That's the beginning. Obviously, we have resources. We have massive resources, and perhaps that's a liability, because when you think you don't need to have management. You touch on this question of the type of strategies. The government, in my view, still seems to believe in trickle-down economics, which is a discredited philosophy, but it does. It believes in infrastructure. But infrastructure, we're spending a lot of money. I went into Georgetown today, a substantial piece of road that was repaired 1 month ago. And the guy who was right with me, he said, well, Mr. Ram, you know, this is a monthly thing. In Waterloo Street, you build the avenue, but you don't build the side. We're wasting tons of money. And we must remember, our budget is financed largely by debts and oil funds. When those two go, you boast no new taxes in your 5 years. What happens when you do have to pay taxes? You have loans to start repaying. So, but that's a broader discussion. One hopes that out of this whole election campaign, good sense will prevail. People will return to Parliament, whoever do, and we can have a sensible, meaningful patriotic kind of discussion that will take our country forward and not backward.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these are the costs for us when we choose race and political parties over what is good for the country. My fellow brothers and sisters, it's my hope that Globespan has brought to you information that could help you to look towards changes from inside and thereby affecting the changes on the outside. Massive amount of wealth God has blessed our country. However, man seemed to have, and man in the plurality seemed to have limited what should be for the Guyanese people. So once again, I want to let you know that Globespan from next week Monday will be on every night 7:30 until September 2nd or 3rd, whichever one would have the final results of the election. We continue to pray that God will open our eyes so that we could see all the situations as they are and continue to pronounce God's will over the country. We will continue to invite all type of guests. Some of the other opposition members wants to come on Globespan. We kind of refrain from that because we want to have a diverse sort of discussion. We want to be able to have all the political parties on Globespan. I want to thank you guys for your support. I want to thank all of you for your being with us every week, and particularly our very nice and impressive numbers on YouTube, etc. And gentlemen, very extinguished, very men of high caliber. I want to thank you, Mr. Ram, Professor Blackman, and Mr. GHK. Good night, everyone.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Alex. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful
Good night, everybody.
Good
It's
night.
been a pleasure.